And welcome to another edition of Rosen Sports Monday on this bone-chilling January morning, MLK Day. And thanks for joining us. I have a very special guest today. I've interviewed some big stars on this podcast already, but I've never been quite as nervous as I am today because sitting next to me is my wife. I know, as weird as that sounds, but we're also here to talk about her career, her background, more importantly, and things that made her the person that she is today. First of all, I want to thank our sponsors, Lexus of Maplewood, Lexus of Wayzata, our good friend Charlie Swanson, who's been with us from the start. If you're looking in the market for a Lexus, check them out, and we will hear from our sponsors a little bit later. And my friends over at Stretch Lab, locations throughout the Twin Cities. They've had a lot to do with me keeping going, keeping moving forward, as they say. So check out Stretch Lab throughout the Twin Cities as well. Well, Karin, hi. This is so bizarre for us and for me. But we thought this was a good idea for lots of reasons, both professional and personal. So welcome to the podcast.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's talk about your professional background first, because you have quite a road travel to where you are today as the Chief Legal Officer for the Minnesota Vikings. And people think, well, how do you get a job like that? Well, let's talk about your humble beginnings in Westbrook, Minnesota, because when I first met you, you started telling me about your family and the environment you grew up with and the people you grew up with. So for those who don't know where Westbrook is and what it was like growing up there, why don't you enlighten them about that?
Well, you're right. I did grow up in Westbrook, Minnesota, which is, as you know, where my parents still live.
Mm-hmm.
We're blessed to have both of them still with us. Dad just turned 90.
Yes,
and
he did.
as you know, Mom just turned 86 on Friday. So Westbrook is tucked in the southwestern part of the state, a town of about 700 people. And we lived on a farm a mile north of Westbrook.
And you also grew up, I mean, we'll talk about obviously the friends, everybody you grew up with, but grandparents were there. You took me up to their house. So, I mean, this is, I think for people who imagine what that life is like, it's there. I mean, there's generations that continue on in Westbrook.
Yeah. So my parents both graduated from high school in Westbrook, just like, my brother and I did, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom's parents lived just down the road, about less than half a mile away. So, I saw those grandparents all the time. And my other grandparents on my dad's side, they lived in town for most of my growing up period. And so they were about a mile away.
And what kind of a farm does or did your dad have that he worked, he still does, but believe it or not, at 90, but growing up, and what was that all about?
So we grew up on a grain farm primarily. So, and my dad grew up on a farm and his dad grew up on a farm. Like both of my families are products of immigrants who came to this part of the world so they could be farmers. So it's a grain farm, so corn and soybeans primarily. And my dad also had hogs, a hog barn.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger, he had some cattle.
So when you're growing up, as opposed to we suburbanites who grew up with a different sort of environment, what were your mornings like even before you went to school? Did you have, and I know this is your favorite word, chores, but did you and your brother David have chores that you were assigned to, that you just naturally had to do or in the morning before you went to school?
We didn't, because we didn't have the animal kind of chores that a lot of, like my sister-in-law, Hillia, her family had those kinds of chores. We had more chores in the summer because we had to be out in the field, in the grain field for doing things, picking rocks, walking the bean fields, that kind of thing. And David would help with, machine shed work, baling hay. And I had chores. I was responsible for house chores, right? But yes, I do talk about chores. As you know, I think it's important to get, I grew up, you get your chores done, you get your work done first, and then you go on about your day.
How much did those disciplines translate to your career as you built it, that you learned on the farm compared to maybe someone who didn't have that sort of discipline growing up?
Yeah, I think maybe the most important thing that I learned from growing up with the parents that I have and in that environment is the importance of truly of hard work and having a strong work ethic. So it was just always instilled in me that whether it was homework or the work that you needed to do at home or outside, that you did that and you did it first. Like it was always the first priority to get that done. And then if there was time, then there was time to play or to go do other things. And that has just stuck with me. And that's how I approached undergrad, how I approached law school.
Mm-hmm.
I always did my studying first, and I stayed disciplined. I'm not someone who missed classes. I went to class. I got my studying done first, and then would have fun afterwards if there was time. And I approach work that way too. I'm not someone who procrastinates, right? If there's a project that needs to be done, I want to get it done. I want it to be done well, and I want to get it done. And I think that has helped me. I think people notice that, and it's just helped along the way. And it's so instilled, I don't really even think about it anymore.
Now, I've had the good fortune of being to Westbrook, of course, to visit your folks a number of times, and been in the town both summertime, wintertime. Mm-hmm. And you drive down Main Street, and we were there for your dad's 90th birthday at the VFW. And I kept saying to myself, what did you do for fun here? I mean, what was a weekend, like you had some time off and you're done with your chores. What did you and your friends do for fun?
Well, when I was in high school, we would usually drive to Worthington. That was the closest place to go to a movie. There was a Godfather's Pizza there, and that would be that would be like date night, or, and that was, 35 minutes away. It wasn't an easy thing to do. And, people had things in their houses. Like I had a lot of friends in our basement that friends would come over. And sports was really, really important. Like it is in a lot of small towns, right? That is a centerpiece of what brings people together. And people would come to the games, like for a high school basketball game or a high school football game. Those stands were full, and you didn't miss. And that, for some of our main rivals, the C squad games would be full, leading up to the B squad game, leading up to varsity. So sports was a big part. And then after that, people would go to the bowling alley, or we would do the thing my dad hated the most, which was just being in your cars and driving up and down Main Street.
Get home, Karin.
Yes.
That was before you had cell phones, though.
That's right. No cell phones in the early 80s.
Couldn't get a hold of you. But what's always struck me about those relationships that I know that were cemented back then is how many friends you've had for life based on growing up like that. Now, I grew up in a big, St. Louis Park, and we went to, I had 900 kids in my graduating class. I mean, you just mentioned how big Westbrook was, but you've managed to, for the most part, the people you want to stay in touch with, you've stayed really good friends for all these years, which is really nice to have as an adult as you move on in life.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's been, that's not just a tribute to me, right? It's to these special people who've been committed to staying in touch. And I'm grateful for those relationships, just as I'm grateful for the friends I made in undergrad and law school and when I lived in lots of different places around the world. I think it's one of the great joys of life to make lasting relationships with people.
Well, that's a word right now that maybe is getting lost with this generation a little bit. I mean, because of social media and everything else, the way how impersonal things are, and I've seen it firsthand with you, and whether you're getting together with girlfriends or whatever the case may be, the phone calls and having that time together, you seem to cherish it now more than ever.
I do. Yeah. I really do. I think, relationship building is something that's so important to daily meaning and daily fulfillment. I think it's so important to professional success and fulfillment as well. And, there's no shortcut to building relationships. It's not a check the box exercise like some people believe it is. It requires time. It requires time and investment. And I've always loved that. And I think I really, to your point, I think I really recognize now how important that is and why that matters, not just to me, but to those people that you're committed to.
Well, after Westbrook, then I believe you went on to Minnesota State Mankato.
That's where I graduated from undergrad.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you were, when I first met you, I remember you had a piano and you sat down and goodness, I know you were a little rusty. You had put the piano away for moving purposes. You were really good, and I wish you still could play because I love listening to you play. But was that in your mindset at that point, since law was not maybe the furthest thing from your mind? Was music your love, your passion, and thought maybe potentially make a career out of it?
It was initially. So, speaking of some of the discipline sort of things, and I should have mentioned that earlier, I played 2 instruments growing up. I played the piano and the flute. And so I needed to practice both of those. And I did practice every day. And so that was part of my after school routine, was the time spent practicing, besides doing things like cheerleading practice and all of those things. But music has been a huge part of my life. And I would say, just going back to growing up, my dad has a beautiful voice.
Sure does.
He has sung in lots of different groups. Church choir was a big thing. If I wasn't singing in it, I was playing piano for choirs and for every kind of singing group at Westbrook High School and at Mankato at undergrad. I played for the concert choir there and for a group called the Ellis Street Singers. So music has been a big part. And I started college as a music major. But I realized I didn't want to be a music teacher. I had taught piano lessons already through high school, and I didn't want to do that. And I really wasn't interested in being like a choir or band director. And I frankly wasn't good enough I was good, but I wasn't good enough to be, a performer as a professional career. So I shifted to a more practical major in undergrad, to accounting.
Oh, my.
And I did that for 3 years after undergrad. I was in public accounting, so I worked with Touche Ross, which is now part of Deloitte & Touche.
Well, getting back to your singing, I have the opportunity to hear you sing in the car one-on-one when your favorite artists come on. So I keep thinking, well, you would be great at karaoke night, because you do. I'm going, how do you know the lyrics to
I
this?
belted out.
You do not... highway patrolmen are pulling us over because they're making so. No, but you love it.
I do.
It's fun,
especially when the 80s play.
So, we know you went through kind of a rough patch for a little while, and you graduated from Minnesota State Mankato, right?
I did. Yep.
And then, so tell us about how your travels went from that to getting to Iowa to law school. But considering the fact that you told me you had never even met a lawyer in your life, which is mind-boggling to think of where you are today. Didn't grow up around a bunch of attorneys, didn't grow up in that environment of developing a passion for law. And so what sparked that?
So I think at a time in my life when I realized that, public accounting just wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And as you said, I was going through a difficult personal time. I just decided it was time to start a new chapter, right? And I was thinking about different options, and I knew I'd probably need to go back to school if I was going to completely shift careers. So I was reflecting on some things that professors had told me in undergrad at Mankato. For an accounting degree, you need to take a couple of law-related classes. And I remember a couple of professors saying, I think you'd be a good lawyer. And at that time, I just wasn't interested in doing more school. And I just frankly had never ever thought about being a lawyer. It seemed intimidating and daunting. And like you said, I didn't know any lawyers. But at a time when I was at a crossroads, I reflected on that. And I talked to a few people, none of them lawyers though, actually, but people who, were successful in their careers. And I started exploring that, like, could this be a thing? And I ultimately was deciding between law school at the University of Minnesota and the University of Iowa. And I was at a time in my life I really had no money, and Iowa offered me a scholarship, and that made all the difference. And I moved to Iowa City, and started law school on a wish and a prayer, really. I mean, I can remember that first day. I will never, ever, ever forget how scared I was. And
You're
I
all
didn't
alone,
know, I
basically.
didn't know anybody there, but that school changed my life. I know I've said that to you many times, and that's why I'm on the board of that law school foundation. I want to help other people who need that assistance like I did, and to make sure that law school stays in good stead and in good shape. So
Well, it did save you.
it did
to a great extent.
It really did, and it gave me hope for a career that I could really have passion for. And I knew my first semester, even though it was really, really hard, that this was the right thing for me. And I met professors and students who really were welcoming and who were helpful. And law school's competitive. You're basically kind of competing against your other classmates for ranking and things. But I never felt it was a cutthroat environment there. There were a lot of really, really good people there.
How did you feel about passing the bar and officially becoming an attorney? How intimidating was that?
Well, I think that part of the journey wasn't as, it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. I applied the discipline that we talked about before. And that's my best advice to people who are graduating from law school, getting ready to take the bar. I'm like, take it seriously. It's just a few months. Take a review course. Do everything they say you should do. Don't wait till the last minute to study. You'll be fine. So, to be a certified public accountant like I am, you have to take the CPA exam. So I had done that already. Law school is full of exams. I think once you get through that, you have more confidence about the bar exam. So I took that. I moved to Seattle after law school. So I took the bar exam in the state of Washington. And then when I moved back to Minnesota, I had to take the bar exam here again. So I've taken the CPA exam, bar exam in two different states.
So your first job was in Seattle then?
My first legal job.
Legal job, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right.
And that you stayed there for how long?
About 3 years.
Yeah.
And I moved back. This ties back to one of my dear family members, was when my nephew Isaiah was born, who you know very well. And then I was here, of course, when his sister Taria was born. So, my nephew and my niece are such important parts of my life. And I was able to be here when they were little and they were growing up.
Well, then let's fast forward a little bit because, the name of Cargill is such an important one in the Twin City area and the whole state. I mean, it speaks for itself, and you ended up getting a job there.
Mm-hmm.
As it turned out, traveling the world. I mean, you started telling me when we first started going out, you started telling me the places you've lived and worked. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it was like a Rand McNally atlas of the places you've been and worked. I mean, that must have been overwhelming. I mean, to think about the opportunities you had.
It was really wonderful. I mean, there were a lot of challenges with doing those assignments abroad, and we can talk about that a little more. But, I worked in the Twin Cities for Cargill out in Wayzata for several years before all of that happened. So I started at Cargill in 98, and it was January of 2007 when I did my first assignment abroad to Russia. I moved to Moscow. And
that just boggles my mind. When you, even though many times you've told me that, I'm like, how did you communicate? How did you get around? How did you know where to eat or talk to people? And you're in Moscow. You're not in Paris. You're in Moscow.
Yeah, I had so many people there. Cargill had a network of really wonderful people. I worked with such great humans and great professionals in that office in Moscow. And we had a country leader there who he and his wife were really supportive. I had an incredible legal team there, and they spoke English as a second or third language, so we could communicate. The everyday life was challenging. So, you figured things out. And I think those are the experiences. I mean, not everyone has to go to Russia to learn and grow, but to do things that you haven't done before that are hard, that are challenging, that's when you really grow and develop. And so I am incredibly grateful for that and all of the other experiences I had for that reason. But there were so many wonderful things. I know especially with the things that are going on in the world today, it's hard to believe that Moscow was a really great place to live, but it really was. The arts culture is so valued there. The recitals I could go to for singing, for any instruments, the ballet is incredible. The number of museums, and most of these things don't cost very much money because they really encourage people to do these things. People are so well read, people who are drivers and do all kinds of different things, so well read, often have some experience in the arts as well. So there's a lot. And the people that I worked with were incredible humans.
And they treated all Americans well. They're raising families. They're doing the same things we're doing.
Yeah. And it was 2007. So it was a very different time.
Yeah, it was.
Than it is right now.
So quickly, your travel log from Moscow, and then what were your next steps along the way with Cargill before you ended up here back in Minnesota?
I went to Geneva, Switzerland next, and I was there for 3 years.
Okay. And then?
And then to Singapore.
My goodness, was it 98 every day, basically?
It was about 90 every day. And the temperature, it only swayed maybe 5-6 degrees between night and day. And it was quite humid every single day, 365 days a year.
And then Singapore was the last stop?
It was. Then I came back to Minneapolis in 2012.
Okay. And what brought you back here?
Cargill.
Cargill.
Yeah.
Came back to Cargill.
Cargill, it was time they needed me to take over the role of North America General Counsel here. Let's
segue, because we are going to take a break pretty quickly here and talk about our personal life a little bit, how we met. But I do want to talk about how you ended up with the Minnesota Vikings, because I know you were, growing up in Westbrook, you were a Vikings fan. Your family was. You're a Twins fan with, Harmon, your cat, and named after Harmon Killebrew, of course. So how did you end up with the Vikings?
So, yeah, it's not your typical path, I think. When I meet with law students who are, how do I do what you're doing now? How do I get there? And I always say there's not just one path, and there isn't. And my path was atypical. So I had been at Cargill all these years, and I had a friend who was a friend of Kevin Warren. And Kevin, at that time, was still the general counsel for the Vikings, but he had been promoted to the chief operating officer. So he was looking around to think, who could take over the top legal role for the team. So my friend made this introduction to Kevin, and so we just gradually got to know each other. And I don't think I maybe fully realized that this was going to be a job transition, but Kevin and I would get together for a coffee or a dinner every few months. And it was during that time that we got to know each other. And I think he got comfortable that I could be the right person for that role.
And going out with Kevin Warren is not just having a quick dinner and moving on. I mean, it's usually a 3-4 bottle of wine. He's a wine connoisseur. You are as well, but mostly Kevin. And he enjoys his dining experiences. So I can only imagine doing work and having a social occasion with Kevin must have been something.
He believes in the value in breaking bread together, I would say. And so that's what he refers to it as, whether it's a group of 2 or a group of 8. I think he's right about that. There's some things that form in a relationship with or without wine that happen outside the office.
So being the chief legal officer for the Vikings, of course, when I'm on with Common during the afternoon on KFAN, he's always asking me, what does Karin think? Like, I'm looking over your shoulder at Justin Jefferson's contract and et cetera, et cetera. And I go, Karin doesn't tell me anything. And she says, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. So expand a little bit about what your responsibilities are, because it is an interesting title. And I know we have a great staff that works with you.
I do. I have the best team with Renika and Jeremiah and Greg and our assistant Bev. But we're responsible really for all of the legal affairs of the organization, except for players' contracts. So the football side handles the players' contracts. So, the NFL is big business. So there are lots and lots of commercial transactions. So that could be, with a vendor. It's a lot of our sponsorships agreements with our partners. It's our suite agreements. I work closely with the office. And I also oversee social impact work. Mm-hmm. So, I wear two hats. I am the Chief Legal Officer, but I have the great privilege of overseeing our work that we do to make a positive impact in the community. And that's a great team too, a team of 12 people who do remarkable work.
One thing you take a lot of pride in, and it's very important to you, I know, is empowering other women in the workplace and others that you mentor. Tell us about that journey and why it's so important to you, and understanding that women have opening doors is there right in front of their own face right now.
I think because I've had so many people who have helped me along the way, people, and especially starting at Cargill, who saw potential in me that I did not yet see in myself, and helping to build up that confidence, like being told that you have the potential to be a leader, to be a really good leader, is not something that came naturally to me. And I think that's true for a lot of people, and especially women. They think oftentimes women aren't raised in a way to think about themselves in that way. So I just want to help people to really achieve and realize their potential. And that requires time with them, to understand, where they're struggling, or maybe they aren't seeing things that they could explore, different development opportunities, or different things they can do to increase their presence and their visibility. And
the NFL has been doors wide open. You have many friends around the league. You've talked about it many times. I have so-and-so. And women have been more than welcome, right, in positions like yours and others in power, so to speak, that the NFL has been very inclusive that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I always hope to see more and more, but I have lots of trusted friends and colleagues, whether in other teams or in the league office, who may not look like what the NFL looked like 20 years ago, right? And, I think that kind of diversity is really important for the success of not just our organization, but for the league as a whole.
All right, we're going to take a break and come back and talk about how we met because of my cat, Willow.
Who's still with us.
Very much part of our family. But right now it's time to hear from our sponsors, Lexus of Wayzata Maplewood and Stretch Lab. Hey, Rosie here for Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. If you're in the market for a new luxury vehicle, look no further than my good friend Charlie Swanson at Lexus. Whether you're on the west or the east side of the Twin Cities, they have got you covered with two great locations, Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. Check out the all-new Lexus TX, a spacious SUV with 3 rows of seating and plenty of room for all your gear. Head over to lexusofwayzata.com or lexusofmaplewood.com for details and to find your next ride today. Hey, Mark Rosen here for Stretch Lab. I had my introductory first stretch when I was visiting my relatives in New Jersey. I went to the local Stretch Lab there for my 50-minute session. I felt so good afterwards. So when I came back, I immediately called that Stretch Lab in Eden Prairie. They have locations all over the Twin Cities where my nephew first signed up. I've been hooked ever since. There are locations I mentioned throughout the Twin City area, but I stuck with my Tuesday morning appointment with Jason to get my 50-minute stretch in as part of my schedule. It's like a meditation session. He stretches out my legs, my hips, my back, my neck, my traps, all of it, and I take some deep breaths, and I feel like a new man every single time I leave. My nephew's in his late 20s. I'm a little bit older, but it doesn't matter. Stretching is so important in our daily routine. Having an expert do the work is the only way to go. My advice, give Stretch Lab a chance to improve your overall health. Check out a location near you. Welcome back to Rosen Sports Monday. My special guest, her name is Karin Nelsen, who's the Chief Legal Officer for the Vikings, and my beautiful wife. Okay, so there you go. You know the story by now. But if you haven't heard the background, this is how it went down. I adopted a little kitty named Willow from the Humane Society of Golden Valley. This was a couple months after my wife Denise had passed away, and my daughter Chloe had felt like, Dad, you need some company. You need, and we had a cat years ago. sassy, of course. And she lived a good long life. And so I said, okay. So we were at dinner one night and they were about to close, I think. And she goes, no, we got to go out there right now. We got to go out there right now. So we ran out to the Humane Society, which I love. I love going out there, except it's really hard to go out there and not come home with another pet. Having said that, I saw a litter of kittens, and one popped her head out and looked right at me, and I'm not making this up. And there was like 5 or 6 of them in there. And I went, that's the one. I'll be back tomorrow morning. Put her aside, put a tag on her. I'll be back tomorrow. So that's what I did. Went and got Willow and brought her home, and it started, because I was kind of having fun, getting to know her, and she's getting to know me, and she's such a cute little cutie. I was taking pictures and posting them on social media for no other reason than she's so damn adorable. So I said, here's Willow, blah, 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 blah. And people would react and either go, oh, that's cute. I like it. I'm glad you're moving on with your life. You got a cat. And one of those people were you. And you didn't comment on anything. You just liked it. And I don't know how many months went past, and I was kind of just absorbing all of it and kind of starting a life anew for me, which was hard to do. And I just remember it was one day down the road, obviously from then, when I was looking at the likes, and I saw your name, and I went, God, I think I know who that is. I think we had met one time at the Vikings facility for some other thing we had to deal with, and it was kind of an informal situation, but it was, I remember a lot about it. And so I'm browsing, through your pictures going, huh, I just want to go out and have a cup of coffee. I just want to, meet, time to get out and meet somebody, just have some fun and relax a little bit. So I remember I texted Bob Hagan, who's the PR director of the Vikings for many, 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 many years, good friend of mine. And all I said was, is Karin single? And he wrote back, and Bob's perfect response was yes. And that was all he said. I went, okay, I got this from here. I didn't have your number, obviously. So I contacted you direct messaging, since you followed me on Twitter, to say, hey, I don't know do you want to have a cup of coffee? I had no idea where you lived. That you could have lived in Arden Hills for all I knew. But fortunately you didn't. You live downtown. And so we met for coffee. This is awkward for me. It's like, well, what did you think when I contacted you about having coffee? Just the first time, because we did meet eventually for a cup of coffee.
We did. We met at Gavin's coffee place, yes, in the North Loop. So honestly, when you reached out, I really thought it was a professional, because I have, at that same day I was having lunch with Courtney Cronin from ESPN. I'm like, it's kind of my media day, right? I'm, I believe in relationship building, as you know, and I just thought it was probably that. That's what I truly thought. So, and we both were rushed for time.
We had a meeting to go to as well.
I think we had 1 hour, and it was also the day that the masking requirement was lifted for the city of Minneapolis, because we were still at the kind of towards the end of COVID.
Yeah.
So I had walked in to Bellacore, the bakery, with a mask on,
Mm-hmm.
and you said, you met me at the door, and you said the mask mandate has been lifted. So I took it off so we could drink our coffee together.
And Gavin happened to stop by that day, which was really cool, because we both knew him, of course, yeah. and it was so ironic.
I think he was perplexed to see the two of us together. He didn't quite know that connection. And then you asked at the end, this is my recollection, okay. You asked at the end, we had a great chat.
Yeah.
And you asked at the end, that maybe we should have dinner.
We both had to rush away.
Yeah. And it felt like it was too short.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, but only if we go across the street to Spoon and Stable, Gavin's restaurant.
And I knew right then and there I was in trouble. I said, okay, that sounds like a plan. We'll do that, I think, next Friday. You were going to Detroit, I think, to visit a really good friend. And
yeah.
I said, that's fine. I think it was the following Friday.
Yep, it was a week later.
And then tell me the story. tell the listeners the story about how you talked to your younger brother, David, about our interaction and how you interpreted it.
Yeah. So after that, so when you asked me for dinner, I was kind of confused, because I'm like, is this still a professional kind of relationship building thing, or is this a date? So I called my brother, of all people, and he has been married to his high school sweetheart
Right.
now for, well, as of this year, 35 years. So if there's anyone who really would not know anything about dating right now, it
David.
would probably be David. But he is a confidant. And I remember being in the car and calling him and telling him that we'd had coffee. And I said, and he wants to have dinner. And I said, do you think this is a date? And David's like, it sounds like a date.
Well, the beauty of it, then we met, of course, I picked you up. We went to dinner at Spoon and Stable, which is one of my favorite places as well. And we had a 3-hour plus dinner. And I was a little intimidated because the way you ordered your drink, the glass was very important to you, the type of glass that it was served in. I went, man, I'm in trouble. I have no idea what she's talking about. I just want a beer and a whatever. But we talked for... And it's amazing how many people, obviously, because of our business connections, we had in common. And not just from, I know so-and-so and so-and-so, but the real relationships that both of us had with the same people we knew. And I think that really struck me as something that was really important to me because not only, I know Bud Grant, I know, Jim Marshall and this person and that person. And, but it was the personal side of it. I think that why we connected so much. And that, again, it kind of speaks to what we talked about earlier. Both of us over the years have developed relationships and understanding that beyond any games that I covered and what we did or you went to, it's the personal relationships that last and mean the most. And I think that's what we both had in common that night that resonated with me about your passion for people.
Yeah, I would say the same thing for me. It's not just that we knew a lot and we're separately friends with some of these same people. It's that I think it's the way we approached life, right? We care about people. I think one thing that I noticed about you probably from the first time we had coffee in there was how you treat people. You treat people with dignity and respect, even if people are coming to, they want a picture or, they want to talk to you about your broadcasting days on CCO. You treat people really, really beautifully, and that's important to me. And I think because you do that, you have built so many good relationships, and that's just something I treasure.
I want to speak to a couple of people that have meant the most to us. I mean, that we've connected with over the last couple of years, in particular, while we were courting and before we got married. And those people are Bud Grant and Jim Marshall, and both have meant a lot to me in my career beforehand, and then meeting through you and understanding how important they were with you. But let's talk about Bud first and his lovely wife, Pat. I know I'm getting emotional now too. I've been talking about him, but he was special.
Yes.
And I don't want to use that word in a way that people know who Bud Grant was and meant to this state in so many ways. But Bud was really hard to get to. From a broadcasting standpoint, I had to cut through a lot of stuff, and I was very intimidated by Bud for a long time because he's Bud Grant. I mean, he could just give you a look with those steely blue eyes and pierce right through you. And so I had to earn his respect as a broadcaster, which I did over time. But after he retired and after I kind of was going through my retirement, everything that we had gone through with our personal lives, he had lost his first wife and I, lost mine. And it was an astonishing transformation to get to know Bud Grant and understand his background, for him to talk about his days with the Minneapolis Lakers. And my mom, who absolutely adored him, had a huge crush on Bud, watching him play for the Minneapolis Lakers, but had this connection. And then I hear you tell your stories about Bud, and it was like there's another reason why we click so much, because we had that same sort of feeling about someone like him.
Yeah. One of my greatest joys since joining the Vikings, you've mentioned the two people who I would hold out as being those joys, and that's Bud and Jim Marshall. I still remember meeting them both for the first time. I think by the time I met Bud in 2016 when I joined the team, he was at a different stage of life. He probably had softened just a bit from when you started working with him as the head coach. But his stories, his matter of factness. I mean, the number of times I could sit down and have lunch with him in our cafeteria, because he still came into the office every week and go through his mail. I ended up helping him on a few things that he, just weird things come up in your life where you might need a lawyer to give you some advice. And he and Pat together were just dynamite. And to hear some of the things, his view of things that you've heard about or that you've watched throughout the years play out on the field, to hear his version or his recollection of it was really amazing.
Well, special for so many reasons. And you're right. His significant other, Pat, whom we just saw recently at Paul Wiggins' funeral, as a matter of fact, was another Goliath with the Minnesota Vikings organization. But Pat, when we were going out for a period of time, she was a sneaky little devil, because behind your back, she would look at me and she would point to her ring finger and go, Mark. And she'd look at her watch like, it's time. I went, Pat, leave me alone. But she meant well. And eventually I listened to her.
You did.
The other one I'll talk about, I know it's emotional to talk about, but we both had the opportunity to spend significant quality time with the captain, Jim Marshall, the last year of his life in particular. And before that, we'd go to his house with his beautiful wife, Sue, and we'd have dinner there. And just, I'd watch a football game with him, and he'd sit in that big chair of his and that hearty Jim Marshall laugh, and he'd talk about things. I remember one time there had some Viking practice video. I was on the newscast, and he was analyzing it like a coach and what they were doing right and wrong. I'm going, oh my God. And of course, his stories were endless and what he had done. But I just wish I could tell people and have the opportunity to meet someone of that stature, of that presence, and why he was the captain, because he led. He was a leader of men, and that's I'll never forget him. I mean, he was a huge impact on my life and yours as well.
Yes, he is one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met, for all the reasons you mentioned and for countless others. And it was so hard for both of us when he passed early this summer. Jim was, aside from all of the football accolades, he was such a decent and good human being. And he loved Sue so much, and seeing them together and being around them as a couple was really inspiring for me. It truly was, and it still is, honestly. And he was so thrilled for us.
Oh, was he ever?
When he found out about us dating. And the last thing that Jim told both of us was how happy he was for us. That is the last thing that he was able to say to us. And the last thing I know I said to him when I had a moment with him in the hospital was that we would look after Sue.
Yeah, we did.
And
we are.
Yes, along with a lot of other people who love
Sue's
her.
Sue's a strong woman.
But we are, and we always will.
Yeah. Our courtship just took off, and we had a lot of fun. We went to some concerts together. We did a lot of fun things. Went to a couple, sporting events, and et cetera, et cetera. And we got to know each other. I did kiss you on the first date. So I did.
We weren't supposed to talk about that.
Oh, darn it! Like, you cut that out, Alex. Just kidding. But it was a steady sort of thing, and I felt, and I know there was a wonderful columnist for the Star Tribune, Linda, right?
Laura,
who did a column on us, and they got a lot of reaction to it. She did a marvelous job about moving on with our lives, and she sat with us at your condo for a long time and asked us a lot of personal questions, emotional questions, and talked about how people can find the next chapter in their life moving on. And I talked about it at that point a little more openly, because I felt I was in a position to encourage others, much the way I did about caregiving when I went through that whole process that I'd never been exposed to, nor does I want anyone else to have to go through, but that's life, whether it's a parent, a spouse, a sibling, whatever the case may be. We all go through it at some point or another. And so I gave as many possible lessons as possible. But then moving on, which is a term I use a lot, was also important. And I didn't know. I had no, thinking that I was even actually going to ever get married again. That's the last thing on my mind. But you spun my world around, and here we are.
Here we are.
That column was terrific.
It was.
I think it inspired
and I
a lot
think
of people.
we could be honest, and we could be vulnerable and true to ourselves in that piece. And I really do still respect so much that you have been willing to share all parts of your story, and you know more than I do, but I know for sure that's helped a lot of people. It's been inspiring to people, and everyone doesn't need to do it that way. Everyone should do it in the way that's best for them. But you, I think, have helped people both in terms of going through the grief and the caregiving that you did, but also being willing to say, I still want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I know for sure that is helping many other people.
Well, I feel so fortunate about all of this. And I, every day I wake up, it's a beautiful day. It really is, even though it's 14 below today. But I think, one thing we had to deal with beyond, me moving into, your place eventually, you talk about transactions, and you deal with them all the time, the legal profession. I've dealt with them, reporting them. We had to make a big transaction because I had 2 cats now because I adopted Stevie. You had 2 cats,
mm-hmm.
brothers, Abe and Truman.
Mm-hmm.
I had to bring Willow with me, so the math doesn't fit because we couldn't have 3 cats. We only had to have 2. Your mom, God bless her, has got lots of cats, a lot of outdoor cats. So we had to make a transaction because we had to trade Abe down to Westbrook and bring Willow over to our place and figure out how all this was going to work. But thankfully, your mom was very giving about it, and now has a new mama, as you like to say. And Abe is now the size of a raccoon. But anyway, that was an interesting time because people who have pets can relate to all this. When you have a new family,
mm-hmm.
the pets are also involved. You can't abandon them. And so that was a fun exercise. You had to make that phone call to your mom to say,
would you be willing to take Abe? And now Truman and Willow are good friends.
They are. They wrestle a little bit, and Willow's an instigator, but they also cuddle together, and it's fun to see them, and it makes our life more enriched all the time. So, that was a fun time. That is for sure. So September 1st, 2023 was the date, right?
It was.
That was a fun, we planned our wedding, and the second time around, and you're thinking, well, I listened to you and your desires for the wedding and the people we wanted to have that were important to us to come and have a good time and
mm-hmm.
really have a good time. Unfortunately for you, even though we had this wonderful food, you didn't get to eat that night. You were too busy.
I did not eat.
I mean, truth be told, I think you had some slices of turkey when we got home that night because you didn't get to eat all our wonderful food, but it was wonderful. Andy Luger, our good friend, was the officiant, and we had Sarah Tuaola singing a song, and it's kind of a blur to me to this moment, but it was a wonderful day, wasn't it?
It was, and the planning was fun too. But I think what was important to us is that we've both had long, rich lives, that we wanted people who mattered to us to be able to come and for them to have fun. And I wanted them to have good food and good drinks and a nice environment. And it's really as much a tribute to them mm-hmm. and their importance 100%. In our lives than it being about us.
Yeah.
So it was a fun, festive party, but it just went too fast.
It did. It really went too fast, and it was a lot of fun to plan. But so I think the message for folks listening right now is that life goes on, and if you're fortunate enough, like we have been fortunate enough to find each other and to enjoy every single day and take it all in and appreciate the friends you're with and your relatives, that the people mean the most to you, that don't let those days go by because you don't want to have any regrets. We've seen it already with our good friends. In the meantime, we hopefully can do some traveling. We have some great friends that we travel with. We're planning a big trip this April, and you deserve it. You've been working hard for a long time. I put my 50 years in at WCCO, and I'm still loving doing this and doing just enough with radio, but it's fun to stay busy. And I think that's the thing too, that people understand. Like, I get that all the time. How's retirement? I'm going, well, and I always get defensive about, not really, but I'm not really retired. I'm still staying busy. I love doing this podcast and meeting interesting people and having them on as guests, and working 3 afternoons a week with Common, which is enough. Like going to get a root canal, and then doing the Fox pregame show for Channel 9 and for the Vikings, which was just a joy for me to do. And hopefully I get at least one more year, and maybe we can get the Vikings to be in the big game. I know. I always joke about the fact that I gave you a nice ring for the wedding. I want you to get that Super Bowl ring. I hope we're running out of time, but it's fun to share all of it with our friends.
It is. It's. I've loved working for the team, but it's extra fun and even more special that we can share that together. And we go to game days early together for home games. We watch the away games together for the most part if I'm not at the game. And you tolerate me, doing my calisthenics and running around the condo during the game.
But it's all there, and it's all fun.
It is. It's been wonderful.
I love the fact that even last night we were watching the Bears game, and we have some good friends, obviously, with the Bears. And painful as it was the end of the game for Chicago, your dad calls from Westbrook, and he wants to talk about the game, and I love doing that. And I can tell him how much he enjoys talking about it and breaking down what happened on the play. But again, it's family. It's a connection. It means everything to me, and to have your folks in my life is the best. So I could keep talking, but I'm not going to. This has been a pleasure.
It's been really wonderful. Thank you for having me as a guest.
No, and you're inspirational to a lot of women out there too. I know who come into this very podcast and you talk with, your good friends with, and have that sort of impact, because you do make friends very easily, and you have the great personality and charisma about you. So can I say this? It's probably the first time I've ever said it to a guest. I love you. Thanks for coming in.
I love you too. I'll be your guest anytime.
Okay. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. Enjoy your warm day here in the Twin Cities. Thanks for listening.